So what's the theme text you've chosen today?
Our theme text, Jeff, is Mark 8, verse 36. For what shall it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his own soul?
Well, I know the subject matter today, but I'm kind of trying to figure out how this has to do with our subject matter.
You know, it seems to me that the modern culture, and I'm going to specifically say advertising, advertising is making Jesus out a liar. Because, you know, there's another text.
This is quite a statement. You're going to have to clarify yourself here.
There's another text where Jesus says that a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things that he possesses.
Yeah.
And so advertising is telling us that life is about abundance, that life is materialism, that life is about quantity.
All of a sudden, all these commercials start flooding through my mind of, you know, you're driving the car and everybody's happy in the car and everything is going great because you're driving this certain model of car.
Exactly.
And, you know, it creates this feeling that, you know, unless you own this car, you're not going to have the abundance of life.
You're a nobody, or you've got to dress a certain way, you've got to wear certain kinds of shoes, you've got to eat certain kinds of food.
Or you have to look a certain way.
Or you've got to look a certain way.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so Jesus, they're saying that really doesn't matter. Unless you have it, you're a nobody. But Jesus is saying that man's life doesn't consist in having lots of things, that there's much more to it than that. Now, I'm sure that we wouldn't want to give the impression that we can live without certain material basics. In fact, I think of the words of the wise man where he said, Lord, don't give me so little that I have to steal to exist.
Okay, I hear you.
But don't give me so much that I forget you.
Yes.
And so it seems to me that, at least in the environment here in America, that our life has lots of quantity, but I think it has diminished quality.
Well, help me out what you meant about making Christ a liar. I'm still a little bit lost on that.
Well, because Jesus said a man's life doesn't consist in the abundance that he possesses.
And so we're being programmed with this whole idea for abundance. And Jesus is saying, on the other hand, true life and happiness is not made up in the abundance.
It's not what you have. Okay. In other words, Jesus, it sounds to me, is saying that the true life is not the quantity life, but the quality life.
Yeah, let's emphasize that again. It's not the quantity life, but it's the quality of life. You know, you and I both had the chance of going to a lot of different third world countries. You said you spent time in Chile, was it?
Yeah, I lived in South America and in Asia.
Yeah, and I've traveled a fair bit too. And I remember going to Romania right after the collapse of communism. And one of the things that just it almost made me a little resentful because I felt like I was really missing out on something. You know, we went to one of these little villages. We were in this home on a Saturday night, and here was 3 generations. They were packed around the table, and they had some nice food there, and there was mom and dad and the kids there and grandma and grandpa, and they were all sitting around talking, laughing, and visiting with each other. And I remember the grandson had his arm around grandma, and they were sitting there, and the TV wasn't on. The kids weren't off doing their own thing someplace else with their friends. They were together, and they were family.
See, it's interesting that you tell this story, because it seems to me that the quality of our lives has something to do with the family. And I've noticed this when I travel. Because, now, it wasn't always this way. In this country, we used to be about the family.
Oh, yeah. I think back in the 1950s, you know, the way family was back in the 1950s. The family was a more quality life back in those days.
But something happened. When we began to go towards quantity, family began to be diminished. And I've been in other countries, and I've thought to myself, oh, if we only had this family again. If we only had this family again.
Well, I wished I could say that this way of life is affecting other cultures, because I'm sure that for our viewers, like in the Philippines, you know, that they have their own dilemmas that we have now, because one of the things that's happening is the spread of this decay in the family is being perpetrated upon all different cultures. It's just not only here in the United States or in Australia or in Western Europe, but it's in a lot of other cultures because of media, basically. Because you started out talking about the advertising world. We're being told something through the media that a certain quality of life comes through a certain quantity of possessions or a certain amount of material possessions, you know.
You know, I had a friend who went back to visit where he was raised. He was raised in India and Pakistan, and he said it was such a shock to him to see what amounted to little mud houses with a satellite dish. And of course, you see, this brings up a subject, and before I mention it, I might say we're friendly to television because this is a television program. But you know, I really think that one of the significant contributors to the diminishing of the quality of family life has been the television.
Yeah, and I can relate to that because I remember when the television was brought into my home when I was a kid. And this is going way back to the black and white Zenith television set. You know, it was first brought in. Us kids, my brother and I and my sisters were so excited because we were getting a television, you know, even if it was a black and white. I mean, that was something exciting in those days. But the dynamics of our whole family changed where before we were doing things together in the evening. Mom and Dad were on the sofa, and my brothers and sisters and I, we were playing in the living room. We were all interacting with each other. And all of a sudden the TV came, and my brother and I were right there changing all three channels.
Yes,
all three channels.
All three channels.
Watching these different programs. And then night after night, the whole family evolved to watching these different programs that came on, you know, television.
You know, although even back in those days, television was a social event. They'd come over to our house and watch television.
Because only some people had televisions in those days.
But when you really think about it, now
we're giving away our age here a little bit. Anyhow,
you may not agree with me, but I think that even though we're all in the same room at the same time, doesn't necessarily mean that we're in there as family.
Yeah, some people think, well, we're going to have family time together, and so they watch a television program together, or they rent a video. And for some, you know, in a certain respect, that's family time, but is that really quality family time? Is that really the family, quote, being together? In a true sense of being together. What do you think?
Well, see, I agree with you because I think ultimately family should be about the interaction of the members.
There you go.
And I think that when I'm a spectator, now I don't know, we don't want to just nitpick here and slice it too thin, but I think the more that we interact with each other, the more family we have. I suppose you could even go to a ball game, and even though you're sitting next to your dad, be so involved in the ball game that you forget dad's there.
Yeah, for sure. And so what we really want in quality of life is to be able to interact with our family more. You know, it's more than television. We can pick on that because that's an easy one, and that's something that really is disruptive to the family unit as far as being able to interact with each other. But there's all these other things that go on too. I mean, nowadays we have a lot more transportation available. There's kids that just, they come in, see you later, Mom and Dad, boom, they're gone out the door, they're with their friends. We don't know, a lot of families don't have a clue where their kids are at.
No,
and Mom's got a meeting she's got to go to, Dad's working late, and we have the internet now.
That's right.
You know, we have eBay, we have things, news that we can check on, we have all these interesting things, and so Dad's stuck on the computer in the back room. I know that's what I'm guilty of sometimes.
Me too.
You know, and I'm in the back room and dealing with that. And then you're having, quote, a little bit of quality time with your family, the cell phone rings. And then you get interrupted and you walk into the other room and your son's saying, but Dad, you say, not right now, I've got a phone call, you know. So life is a lot more complicated.
Let me speak to the phone, and of course, what would we do without our phones? But you know, phones are very invasive.
Oh, tell me about it.
Phones are very invasive. They'll ring at any time, no matter what you're doing.
Everything has to stop.
Everything has to stop. In other words, a telephone's not polite. I think maybe we should get to the place where we don't always answer our phone. Now I know that sounds pretty bad.
Yeah.
But you know, there's another thing that's affecting our family. Sometimes we're so anxious as parents to have something good for our children.
This goes back to a little bit what you started out with the program. You know, that we think that life is fulfillment of life is in quantity. That maybe one of the spouses is working, you know, many hours. Too much.
Or there's another flip to this. Children are developing quite a life these days. Their school demands. In other words, the school is going to take all day, then it's going to take the evening.
Extracurricular activities.
Extracurricular activities. And so moms are finding themselves having to carry their kids all over the place.
Catering to them. And they're thinking that they're giving their kids quality time. But the ultimate bottom line is...
Taxi drivers.
Yeah, it's the difference between taxi drivers and showing your kids you love them because you're letting them participate in a lot of different activities and spending time together communicating. And you know, kids want that so much. I'm sitting at my laptop computer and I'm so oblivious sometimes. As parents, sometimes we're just kind of a little bit dim, I think. You know, I'm sitting working on my computer and my son comes in and says, Dad, what are you doing? And my natural human response is to turn around and want to say something like, well, what do you think, dummy? You know, I'm working on my computer right now. And
I can't talk to you right now.
Yeah, I can't talk to you right now. You know, I wouldn't call my son a dummy, but you know, those kind of thoughts sometimes cross the mind. And really what my son is saying is, Dad, I want you to spend some time with me. I need some time. And so you know what we do? you know, especially if you're a workaholic type guy and you're the kind of guy that's driven to want to try to provide for your family and you got a lot of things going on, you say, okay, I'm going to give my son 5 minutes, you know, quality 5 minutes.
Time. you know, we hear this word a lot. Well, I don't spend much time with my children, but I give them quality time, and that's 5 minutes. Of course, I don't want to, to get into a subject I can't get out of.
Yeah.
But life is about time. I think quality time isn't shortness of time. I think quality time ultimately has to be kind of a lot of time. In other words, my life is what I'm giving time to. And I'm into what I'm spending time on.
You know, I started being more aware of this in my own family, and one of the things I started to do with my son is I started to realize I needed to go do things with him on a one-to-one basis, and my daughter, go do something with her on a one-to-one basis. And I remember the first summer where I really started saying, okay, I'm not going to work 16 hours, because see, I'm in a ministry, I can justify my work. I'm doing something that's good.
Working for the Lord.
Working for the Lord, yeah, and letting my family go to pot. And so I decided I'm going to stop work at a certain time, especially in the summer. My son and I, we go do different activities together. Hiking, we go out to the lake, we do things together. And I remember when fall came, there was at church, and they were taking prayer requests and praises. My son raised his hand, he said, I'm so thankful for my dad spending time with me this summer. And I was like, just hit me on the head, like, it really meant that much to him, that he noticed that I was taking time with him.
You talk about spending time with your children. One of the now I don't have children around the house anymore, but you know who it's hard for me to spend time with? My wife.
Yeah.
My wife. We live under the same roof.
The same
we sleep in the same bed. But I can remember one time I was on my computer, using the computer store. I'm in there on my computer. My wife comes to the door of my office, and she starts talking. And you know how women's, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but women can make a short story long, And so she starts talking. I hate to confess, but as she talked, I was thinking to myself, hurry up. What's the point? Hurry up. What's the point?
Get to the point. I want to get back to what I
want to get back to my computer. And then suddenly I had to catch myself. I said, oh no, stop it. This woman is sharing her life with me.
Wants to interact.
She just wants a little of my time.
Yeah, because life is family. We'll be back in just a moment. You're watching Laymen Ministries Crosstalk.
Laymen Ministries bookstore carries hundreds of books, Bibles, resource materials, videotapes, and audio tapes, all at discounted prices. To receive your free catalog, write or call Laymen Ministries. Or if you would like to receive Richard O'Fill's book, Lord, Keep Your Mansions, Just Save My Children, write Laymen Ministries, 414 Zapata Road, St. Mary's, Idaho, 83861. Or call 1-800-245-1844. That's 1-800-245-1844.
One of the things that we were just discussing was about spending quality time with our kids. And I know one of the challenges that men face is the fact that they think that they're actually providing for their family by working and providing material possessions and things like that for their family. And then, when the wife says, you need to quit working so much because you need to, spend more time with the family, he says, well, I'm doing this for the family. I'm working to try to provide for the family so we can have a nicer car, so we can pay for those season passes to go skiing, right. All these different things. And a man sometimes tries to show his love for the family by working for the family. And the kids don't see that. They don't understand that, because the kids really, what they want is, like we were saying earlier in the program, is they're wanting time.
I heard a story about I was talking with a realtor, and a realtor was saying, and I don't know how often it happens, that they know of cases, and it must not be just one, where these people have this big, beautiful house, but they have to work all the time, they can never be in it, or its expenses are so great that they can't turn the air conditioner on to keep it cool, or they don't have furniture to put in it. And so I see us caught up in this mad rat race of materialism. I've got to have more, or at least I've got to appear that I have more. And who's suffering in this?
Our children.
Family, our children. And I don't think we want to make it just our children. I think our marriages are suffering from
absolutely.
This.
Absolutely, and a lot of the divorces and things that we see happen is this mad pursuit to gain, and then they get to the point where they can't keep up with the amount of expenditure that's going out.
The debt.
The debt. and the kids are getting farmed off to the daycare. And, you know, I want to be sensitive to the fact that we know that some of you have some difficult situations, and we can't address every situation here in this program because everybody's circumstance is different wherever you are. But we can try to get our priorities straight. I think that's where we're really heading in this program, is that we need to establish priorities. And we can't just say that we're going to establish priorities like we were talking about New Year's resolutions or something like that.
Yeah. Because when we talk about time, here's the way it works, and I use the New Year's resolutions as an example. Some people laugh at New Year's resolutions, and I guess they've done studies.
They have a good reason for laughing at it.
They've done some studies, and they find out they last about 5 days. And they've said the reason that New Year's resolutions last such a short time is because we put them on top of everything else. And the point is that if you're going to put something new into your life, you have to take something out, because everything requires time. And so this means, in plain language, if we're going to give time to our spouses and to our children, we're going to have to pull something out.
Pull something out, yeah. And if we only have so many awakened hours during the day, we only have so many awakened hours during the day. We can't stay up later to do it.
Which means what you're saying, we've got to prioritize. We're going to have to prioritize. How important is our family? Our jobs are important, our sports are important, whatever's important. We've got to get to the place where we say, our families are important. In fact, at the end of the day, who do we get to take to heaven? It's not our cars or our houses or our bank accounts.
Let me go from preaching to meddling, as they say.
Okay.
You know, yesterday I picked you up at the airport. We stopped at the restaurant, and we were thinking, well, you know, church is just getting out about the time that we're going to the restaurant. This place is going to be really busy. We go in there, this place is half empty, and I asked the lady, I said, you know, we were kind of expecting the big after-church crowd here. And she said, oh no, today are the playoffs, you know, talking about on television. So, you know, where almost all the men were, if they made it to church, or if they did go to church or didn't go to church, after church, that time in the afternoon, you know where they were, glued to a television set. And I'm not knocking that. I mean, that's something that sometimes it's a father and son relationship to do that. But sometimes we get into, the guys get so involved with television and sports and things like that, that they neglect their family.
That's right.
I've heard many wives come to me and says, my husband's just a sports addict, you know, as he's in front of the television all the time. He doesn't spend time with the kids. He doesn't spend time with me as a wife, you know, and it's tearing our family apart. And so we have to learn to set parameters on ourselves to say that something has got to give so something else can be let in.
What are some of the things that we can do, that we can bring into our lives that would bring together the quality life with the family?
I think one of the things is just being sensitive to when our kids are needing us. You know, when our kids, like I told you the story about my son coming in and saying, hey, Dad, you know, what are you doing? Being sensitive to the fact that our kids need us. I know one of the things that I started doing with my son is on Friday nights, he's got his Sabbath school lesson that he studies. And I say, you know, review your Sabbath school lesson, or if you haven't had a chance this week because of school and everything to study your lesson, study it. When you're done, come into my bedroom because I want to talk with you about it. And we lay on the bed together and we start talking, and, you know, we talk a lot more about that in the lesson, you know, at this point. We start talking about things, and I go back and tell him experiences in my life when I was a kid, and an hour and a half will go by, and he's just sitting there, and he's just glued to his dad.
You know, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but sometimes in trying to communicate with my grandchildren at this stage, or even my children, I try to affect that by asking questions. Now you could say, well, what's wrong with that? Because sometimes you ask a child a question, they'll say, fine. They'll give you one-word answers.
Yeah, short answer.
And so the other day I was talking with one of my grandsons on the telephone, and I'd ask a question, and he'd give me that short answer, and then I would pause.
Just wait.
I would wait a minute, and then he would say, Grandpa, and then he'd start talking, and he'd start talking about certain important things in his life, and I could react to it, and then when he would pause, I would be tempted to ask a question to get the conversation to go on, and he'd say, and Grandpa, and he'd start up again. So maybe we as parents don't need to feel that we have to be interrogating our kids to communicate.
Absolutely.
Because maybe they'll share with us if they don't feel that we have to ask all the questions.
This brings me back to another point, is family worship. That's something for some people they've never incorporated, they don't even know how to do. And for other people, they've let it fall by the wayside. They one time did it, and it turned into drudgery. And there's different reasons that sometimes family worship turns into drudgery. Some people don't even know what I'm talking about, maybe when I talk about family worship. But I'm talking about setting aside a portion of the evening where the family comes together and we open the Word of God, or we have a devotional book, we have prayer together. We usually kind of like do a rehash of the day really quick, just really quickly on that. We talk about who could we pray for. We get the kids involved with that. Who could we pray for? And they have different things they think are important and they want to pray for. And then we pray together as a family. And then we read our devotional, and then we have a closing prayer. And we find out right at this time, the kids finally have gotten to the point where by bringing that into an environment, they finally got to the point where they're relaxed, and they start talking about all this other stuff that happened during the day. And my daughter's sitting on my wife's lap, my son and I are laying on the floor together, and we talk all the way up until bedtime. The concept of family worship, for those that do it, sometimes they make it so rigid, or they make it such a lecture time that the kids don't even want to be there. When I started trying to get out of the rigidity mold of family worship and try to get in more into the conversational mode and opening up the kids to talk and such, it was really hard for me, because when we get into a certain mindset of thinking, and then all of a sudden, you know, age comes upon us, and maybe hopefully by God's grace, wisdom comes upon us, then all of a sudden we realize, I need to talk to my kids. And I realize that for so many years I haven't really done that. I don't know what to say. And it's really awkward. And some people, some men especially, just throw up their hands and go bury themselves in a television set or the computer or whatever. But I think as much as it's uncomfortable for us, we need to get out of our comfort zone and put forth effort to try to do that.
You're talking about something that's really important. And that is, we can say, sit still, sit still.
Sit
You know,
still.
I'm going to spank you if you don't sit still.
Yeah.
And so then we get tensions. And so the child begins to
oh no,
to
family
dread.
worship time's coming.
You know, can I make a confession?
Sure.
We always had family worship. I was
Now
there.
you're talking about with your kids or with you, when you were a kid?
No. This is with my kids.
Okay.
I was at family worship. But guess what I was doing? Sleeping.
You're kidding me.
No.
You're a
And
pastor.
I look back on that. I feel so ashamed. But
You're a pastor. You can't be sleeping during family worship.
No, I'm rationalizing a little bit.
Okay.
But I think one of the reasons was that my wife was doing the little children's
All the
story,
activity stuff with
and
the
she
kids.
was doing the little songs. And here, what was I going to do? And as I look back on it, I thought, what I should have done was got together with Betty so that I had a part of it.
Sure.
That was because
You should have been doing the actions right with the kids.
No, I think I would have, but it was too baby for me, if you hear what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so I've really thought lately that maybe a lot of us men, we don't know what family worship looks like.
Yeah.
See, you figured it out. And I've been saying to men lately, let's make family worship simple. You don't have to
It should
be a
be
preacher.
a fun time of the day.
But it has to be God-centered.
It's got to be Christ-centered. It's worship. But at the same time, it's not drudgery. It's not a bunch of rules and regulations. And sit still right now and, you know, like you said, spank the child or
If they don't sit
give,
still.
yeah.
Do you know something? My wife feels, and I agree with her, that when we have family worship consistently, that when we take the kids to church, they'll sit still.
I think it's a training school.
Don't you think so?
It's a training school.
That if we don't have our children sit down and kind of control themselves during the week, taking them to church. Well, I don't want to stay for church because my kid just won't sit still.
Yeah.
Family worship is
It's a training school
it's a
for
training
the kids
school.
for church service. And so, you know, there is some boundaries that need to be set in family worship, but at the same time, we don't want to make it so rigid that it becomes drudgery to the kids. And I've been to some people's houses because I travel a lot and I stay at people's homes for, you know, speaking appointments, and I've seen family worship to where the prayer goes on for 20 minutes.
That's right.
And the kids are like sitting there, you know, and they're kind of peeking up like this and opening their eyes, and you can tell that they're just like, well, boy, I'll be
can't
glad
wait till
when
this is over.
this prayer is over. Yeah. And so we need to be sensitive to meeting our kids' needs, you know. The other thing that I think is really important is we just started doing this in our home, and we used to do it more with our other kids. In fact, you know, I have 2 sets of kids in my family. I have 2 older girls, and then I have 2 younger kids. I think you have 4 kids in your family too. But
They're all clustered together, though.
yeah, I have 2 different families, so we practiced on one set, and then now we've learned what we practiced on the other set. But what we've started doing is we try to have a meal early in the evening together, where we all are together at the table at the same time.
See, one of these days I'm going to preach a sermon entitled, McDonald's, What Have You Done to Us?
What do you mean?
Well, because it's eating out. In other words, the
Fast food syndrome.
Well, the kids eat out. The kids eat out. In other words, I would like to know, and somebody could probably tell us, what % of the families in our culture are eating together as a family? I know when I was a little guy, my mama called us all to the table, and the meal didn't begin, believe it or not, until everybody was there. And so the meal time was the social time.
Well,
it was the family time.
You've heard the expression, families that pray together stay together. Well, families that eat together and talk together stay together too.
Because ultimately, a family is about communication.
Communication, and that's what we start out this program with, is ultimately when we lay aside all the materialism, what do we really have? Is we have our families. What we started doing in our family is my wife will cook a very simple and nice evening meal. We all gather together, we say grace, and we start digging in, and then we play this game called high-low.
High-low?
High-low.
What's that about?
It's not a country western song, by the way. High-low is everyone gets to share what was their high point during the day.
Amazing.
And what their low point was during the day.
Amazing.
And you know, it's interesting because the kids really enjoy doing this. You know, it's actually probably a little harder for us adults because my wife says, well, Jeff, what was your high point today? And I'm sitting there going, well, what was my high point? But the kids know right away. They can say, my daughter will say something like, oh, when the teacher did such and such and we had the spelling test, I got an A on it. And she let the class know that, you know, I got one of the highest scores in the class, and that was our high point. I said, well, what was your low point? You know, well, I had after school empty all the garbages. You know?
Right.
You know, and it was my turn to do the duties of cleaning up the school, because they do that in the church school that they go to. So that's just one little tip, you know, that some of the families can go by, is to try to pull our families together. Now, you know, we're talking about some single families here too. There's mothers that don't have husbands at home, or they have mothers who have husbands that are not into the faith. But a mother can still set aside some time. It's busy, it's hard, I know it can be really difficult, but to set aside some time to spend with the kids in a quality time, whether it's a meal time or sitting down and just saying, let's have a short worship together. Try to pull the family together to talk. We first started trying to do this, it was awkward.
But you keep talking about the kids, but remember, in my case, we don't have kids at home anymore. And the family is not just where there's kids. It's got to be, in the case of Betty and me, our family now is the two of us.
That's extremely relevant.
Now, as we've come toward the end of the program, we recognize that you and I talk as living here in the United States. And the people that are watching this program are watching it everywhere. And so there are different cultural nuances. What have we said? Have we said that you've got to do family like we do it here in the United States? Are the problems we have here in the United States the problems they have everywhere? Well, maybe somewhat.
Growing more so.
But maybe not. But what we're doing is saying the most important thing you have in your life is your family. And that the devil is trying to attack our families. He's trying to destroy it.
And so we need to pinpoint.
This is our appeal. Our appeal is we've got to make our priority our family.
Amen. And I think that we need to look exactly what it is that is causing us not to have those priorities right. And like you said, we got to come to a point where we make some decisions that we take away some things so that we can add some other things. And those other things that we add are quality time. Because without quality time, our families are going to fall apart. And that is the American tragedy. I've heard people say it that way. That is the American tragedy, is the demise of the home. Of the home. Our time is just about up. If you have any comments or any suggestions that you would like to share with us about this program, or if you'd like to receive our magazines or catalogs, appreciate hearing from you. Our ministry is Laymen Ministries. That's 414 Zapata Road, St. Mary's, Idaho, 83861, or you can call us on our toll-free number, which is 1-800-245-1844.